Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have this chat with Eve today. But before I introduce her, I just want to say hi. Thanks for joining us. I already said that. But as you probably already know, we are in the middle of a big fundraising campaign to help 4 nonprofits who serve the games industry stay in the game. I wrote notes and they were good. And then we started talking and it's all gone to shit. You know what I love, Eve, right now in this time of everyone online and staying home is that none of this has to be professional. Like we're all just, here doing our thing.
The lines have blurred.
It is, right? And I think, folks are just here for it. So, that's what's happening. But anyways, we're doing this fundraiser. We are trying to support 4 nonprofits that serve the games industry to keep our doors open, to create new programming, to respond in this moment to the needs of the games industry. So that's what we're here doing. You might be checking us out on the givebutter.com Stay in the Game page right now. You might be on our Twitch channel. Either way, we are excited that you are joining us. So at any point during this conversation, you are so welcome to hit that donate button and give us a little something. The donations are going to be split evenly between all 4 organizations. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat and we will try to get to them as soon as we can. All right, let's do this. Eve, thank you so much for joining us. This is Eve Crevoshay from Take This, which is a really cool organization that I'm excited to be partnered with and, in communication with on some of these projects that we're doing. So, hi.
Hi. It's really good to be here.
Yeah. Okay, so what is Take This? Talk to us about your org. Oh, and you froze because that's exactly what's going to happen right now.
Yeah. Okay, so Take This is a mental health nonprofit. And we serve the game industry and speak game. So that means that we talk about mental health, which is a universal issue, but in the context of the game industry, in the context of game players and game enthusiasts, and in the context of games themselves. And we try to address mental health in a way that fits with the needs and the cares and concerns specifically of people who surround games.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. And I'm glad you're doing this work. So what is that? Actually, let's start from the beginning. What do we mean by mental health? Like, what is it that we care about in terms of the folks that you're serving?
So when people talk about mental health, they often run up against the really profound stigma that exists around the issue. And the thing is that mental illness or mental health challenges are super common. In fact, the statistics are that 50% of everyone, so half of all people, will experience some sort of mental health challenge in their lifetime. That could be a major mental health diagnosis that requires ongoing treatment, medication, therapy, etc. Or it could be a one-time event related to something traumatic, say a pandemic or some other crisis in your life. And so it's really broad. And in fact, we also talk about things like neurodiversity, so people on the autism spectrum, for example, people with other sensory or processing disorders. So we cast a really wide net when we talk about mental health and mental well-being.
Great. And so what does that mean for the games industry? Remind me, so you service gamers, fans, the industry in general, developers, the whole gambit of folks in and around. Yeah. So what does that look like for folks in the game space?
So it's a variety of things. In the game industry, which is something we've been talking a lot about recently, it means talking about the conditions in which people make games. So that means talking about the experience of working in a hit-driven cyclical industry, the experience of working in an industry that operates largely online and is subject to online harassment and interaction that's stressful, and the experience of working in an industry that's not particularly diverse, for example. We also want to talk and speak to people who play games. We want to remove some of the moral panic around the experience of playing games and playing games in community online. And, right now we're having this moment where suddenly everybody's understanding what games can be in terms of community and support for each other and a way of interacting and all of that really cool stuff. But that's something we think a lot about. And what is the way that we can encourage the game industry to make games that have positive representations of mental illness in them, games that have positive impacts on people's mental health through gameplay and other design elements. And so we think really as broadly as we can about what it means to be healthy and interact with games in a variety of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is so important. I think, your work seems like a part of the growing conversation around taking mental health seriously. And beyond, whatever, Instagram, little, what am I trying to say? The sort of like, everything will be okay kinds of like, the little like, I cannot think of analogies today. Oh boy. But you know what I mean? Like, I think they're platitudes. That is the word I'm looking for.
The meme.
Yeah, like little platitudes. I think that like getting really deep into what it means to live with mental illness, to experience it, whether, chronically or momentarily, like you said, we are socially, I think, at least in some parts of the West, are starting to understand that is a real thing to, like invisible disabilities, dealing with depression, that like a lot of the people we interact with on a daily basis are dealing with some kind of anxiety, some kind of depression, and to not discount that, right? To not discount getting support for that or having a therapist or reaching out to organizations like Take This.
Yeah. Yeah, we like to say, and this is not unique to Take This, but we like to talk about mental health as if it were part of our overall health, right? There's nothing different in taking care of your mind and your emotions from taking care of your body and treating them. And so we aren't maybe as good at talking about them and as good at treating them, but there are really effective ways to do that and to find support and find help. That said, there are challenges in terms of getting the sufficient coverage and access to care around mental health, especially in this country. And that's something that we have to live with and acknowledge. But there are ways to find support, even if you don't have sufficient insurance coverage or you don't have access to a regular therapist. There are a number of ways to get access to support online through text or warm lines and hotlines. And that's why I'm so excited about what you're starting with the hotline, the games hotline, because we need as many nodes of access to mental health support as we possibly can get. And some of those are going to look different from traditional therapy just because there's not enough of that out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thanks for bringing that up. So we're starting the Games and Online Harassment Hotline. And the idea really came out of this space of like, there aren't a lot of resources for folks, especially specifically for people in the game space, because as you said when we started, like there's a certain way that gamers talk, there's a certain way that our culture functions, and I say gamers very loosely. I do not believe in the gatekeeping of that term. You all know this, but I think that when it comes to online harassment, we were our communities were some of the first to deal with the big escalations of online harassment. I don't know anything about that. Dealing with believing folks when they come forward around abuse in their workplace, which crunch is such a huge issue in the games industry. And so I think that having a space that folks can go to where the agents at call centers are actually trained in the language and experiences of what we do, right? If there is a news story that comes out, if there's a particular a thing that's shaking up our industry, and you call just an average, very useful but average helpline, they're not necessarily going to understand the ins and outs of that space. And sometimes I get the sense that like being understood is really valuable to people.
Yeah, it's super valuable. And you talk about things like crunch. It's not just crunch. It's like there's a whole culture around passion in the game industry, right? Like this idea that we come to games because we are passionate about the work that we do. But that leaves people really ripe for exploitation, essentially. You know, it leaves people thinking that they will do anything because they care, and that managers can expect anything of them because they care so much about games and making games. And like, that's not cool. Bless you.
Excuse me.
You know, that's really not cool.
Yeah.
And that kind of those myths, those cultural myths that we hold on to are really harmful to people's well-being. And they also make it really easy for people to get burnt out.
Absolutely.
And burnout is a major issue in the industry. And so, and burnout is now, it's now part of the ICD-10, the diagnostic manual from the World Health Organization. While there are problems with the ICD-10, and I can get to that later about internet gaming disorder, I'm really happy that burnout's there, because burnout is really well defined and burnout is well understood, and it's really important that we acknowledge the existence of burnout as a medical mental health issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Would you want to just get into some of that right now?
The internet gaming disorder stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm always happy to talk about it. And this is where I think we take this to be advocates for the industry, not apologists, and to acknowledge that the game industry has always made games to try and engage people in them, right? To keep people involved and excited. And so there's been this moral panic around things like loot boxes and ways that games keep people playing. And that has been misconstrued as something that causes an addiction to games, where actually it turns out that from all the good research we've seen, people probably aren't addicted to games. They are probably using games to treat an underlying condition, and that the actual incidence of true problematic play or problematic use of games is very, very low. And it's and seems to be, and there needs to be better research about this, and it seems to be connected to other underlying conditions, so that gameplay is the actual coping mechanism that people use, or self mechanism.
That's so interesting. And I think that I feel like that's very much related to all of the myths around gaming that we've had to deal with for decades, right? That like, this, I don't want to get into this territory, but there's just all of these impressions of what it means to be a gamer, which I think really hurts a lot of our communities in ways, and is exclusionary to folks. I'm the child of immigrants, and so when I was a kid, it was very hard to convince my family that I could play games, because in the early 90s, it was very much that mentality of like, gaming will rot your brain, like, so don't let your kids do it, kind of thing, right?
Oh yeah.
And then it became extremely gendered in terms of who was like who was supposed to play games. So like girl or people who were raised as girls weren't really encouraged. So there's all these myths, right, about what it means to play games, that like if you play games on your phone, you're not a real gamer, and all of that. And so I think that as those are maybe softer examples of what you're talking about in terms of like, what is it that games do for people and how valuable is that? I remember, this is a little mental health nerdy, but there is a treatment for trauma. There's a not treatment, but a strategy. What is the word? What is wrong with me today? I'm sorry, y'all. Here we are. EMDR. eye movement, rapid movement, something. It is a type of way to deal with trauma. It is that a therapist would be trained in. And one of my therapists was talking about how like the dual stick is actually, while this is not a treatment for mental health issues, the dual stick has a very similar feature of allowing both sides of the brain to trigger in ways that can feel therapeutic, right? That there is therapeutic approaches or there is some level of therapy that comes from playing games. It's a little bit of a stretch, but it's also true, right? Like in a very really light way.
Yeah. And it's not just like gameplay, with a dual hand gameplay. Like there's ways in which games create help to promote persistence and kind of a tolerance for difficulty, right? So they increase people's resilience because you have to learn, you have to build your skill, you have to fail often multiple times, you have to do the work of trying to figure things out. So they can be actually quite powerful in teaching people those basic coping resilient skills. There's and then social games can keep people connected, right? That's one of the things that right now is really especially concerning to me is loneliness and isolation, right? And online interaction, especially online interaction around a thing that everybody shares as an experience or as a fun occupation that's a distraction or that's something, separate from the news, for example, or the current situation. Games are really amazing for that. Because they keep people engaged together and they're fun. Yeah. And they're many of them are really highly social. Games have they bring a lot of good to people's lives for sure.
Absolutely. It was, for a lot of people, I think such a wonderful serendipitous timing that Animal Crossing came out when it did, like at the very beginning of the lockdown. I think one of the highest selling games for Nintendo right now because everyone was like, well, guess we're all doing this. And I kind of love, like, I don't play Animal Crossing. I didn't get into it, but I really love that the game that is bringing so much joy and connection to folks is not a game about violence, right? It's not, and not that I'm like, you can't have games about violence. Please don't misconstrue my words. I just love that it is like a colorful, warm space for people right now that is the thing. Right. I think
totally. I keep thinking about talking about the diversity of games too, right? Because that's part of what is so important to remember about games is that there's a really wide range of games out there and of gameplay types and ways to be a gamer, as you said. And in that richness, there is something for everyone, right? Animal Crossing is what my daughter and my 9-year-old daughter and my husband are playing together right now. And they love it, right?
Nice.
And I'm playing puzzle games that my husband made on my phone because that works really, because that for me is a way to get out of my head and unoccupied, right? It's a way of kind of zoning out, but also having something very discrete and goal-oriented to do. And so all of those fill different needs for different people, and they're all part of this amazing breadth of what's happening in the world. And right? And I
was going to say, and like, regardless of the type of game you're playing, whether you're, you could be playing a shooter or fighting games or whatever, the communal aspect that games allow people. So instead of just like getting on the phone and being like, hey, like I'm lonely and bored, but also this is a lot of pressure to have like a social interaction right now. Games allow you to be goal oriented, right? Yeah. Like you're working together as a team and you're solving this problem and you're communicating and having that engagement. And even before lockdown, like, a lot of my friends who play like Dota or like the big ones, they get a lot of value out of the social problem solving that comes out of those games. So yeah, it's really cool. Yeah. It's really cool to see how that's taking shape right now. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Yeah.
So games are great.
Yep.
Generally speaking.
Yep.
But okay, so I think I'm really glad that we touched upon the fact that, like, well, yes, there can be issues around playing games too much or like doing anything too much, right? It's not like it's exclusive to games. It's just we get kind of shit on a lot as like the game space, right, by the larger mainstream public who doesn't really understand. I think that it's really important that Take This recognizes the value of games and coming into this space with like that language, that understanding, and how to use games for gamers. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the programs that you do that Take This has?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're probably best known for one of our original program, which was the AFK Room program. And that's these quiet, supportive spaces that we have at game conventions. And we will have again when we can gather again in person. The AFK rooms are the most boring places at a convention by design. And they're staffed with clinical and non-clinical volunteers. And you open the door to the AFK room and it's quiet and it's cool and there's no visual stimulation and you can sit and color or be on your headphones on your phone or just talk to someone. And we provide that as a really important service during conventions, which are super intense experiences, right? We've both been at conventions. They can get overwhelming pretty quickly. Show floors are just overwhelming and busy. And they're also kind of a gateway to a conversation, a more general conversation about mental health and mental well-being, because it's an invitation to perform self-care in real time. And it's an invitation to just have the normal conversation about what do you need to do to take care of yourself. How are you doing? Right? That's our finance. It's okay to not be okay. So the AFK Room program is really important to us, and that was started a number of years ago. We also work now, and this is relatively new, within about a year and a half. We work with a bunch of streamers. We have an ambassador program for streamers, and these are streamers who talk about and are pretty well informed about mental health issues. And so their communities are kind of bastions of hope and positivity and places where you can get informed and scientifically accurate information about mental health and mental health challenges, and where the community is going to be a constructive place for you to hang out. It's not a place to get therapy because that's not an appropriate thing for streamers to provide, but it is a place where you can get some questions answered and get some validation and empathy, and know that they're going to be safe spaces online. And we're really excited about that program, which is expanding as we speak. We have a research program, and that's relatively new. That's led by Dr. Rachel Cowart, who has her background in media effects research. So all that research about problematic play and the benefits of games, social benefits, emotional benefits, et cetera. And we're really excited to see her begin to really dive into some substantive research over the next couple of years. Research is not an instantaneous process, but it's great to have her voice and her expertise on the staff. And then we produce a ton of content. We provide some of that content is trainings and workshops that we provide to game companies and game studios. And then some of that is on our website. We have a ton of resources on the website. We're going to be starting up a podcast soon. Provide the game community writ large with as much information and context and support as possible around mental health issues and mental health needs.
Amazing. That's incredible and so needed. Thank you for doing all of that work. It's
my distinct pleasure.
So if you are joining us, you probably know that we are in the middle of a fundraising campaign and we could really use your help. So the Games and Online Harassment Hotline, Take This, and two other organizations, the Global Game Jam and the IGDA Foundation, are all coming together to say we are stronger together and that we could really use your support right now in this moment. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit the games industry pretty hard in interesting ways, right? In complicated ways, because games game sales are really high right now, but like it is a very challenging space to be in for anything coming down the pipeline from working from home, and loads of different issues like the cancellations of conferences and events and how folks really, really count on those events for promotion of their games and meetings and pitches. And there's a lot of ways that our industry in particular is being hit pretty difficultly. Difficultly? Yeah, we're just going to roll with that one. Difficultly. That's not a word, right?
Sure.
Difficultly. No, it is. Wow.
Sure.
I don't know what's happening, y'all. Here we are on day 564. Maybe I do need to get into Animal Crossing. Maybe that's what I'll do after this. But that said, nonprofits are being hit hard as well. Our sources of funding are drying up, and y'all, real talk, it's hard to run a nonprofit on the best of circumstances. So right now we're all just trying to stay here and stay relevant and do this work to help this industry who could really use it right now and could really use a lot of this support right now. So if you could, we would really love it if you could pitch in a couple of dollars over at our campaign page, which you might already be on. It might be where you're watching this. It's givebutter.com/stayinthegame. If you're joining us on Twitch, the link is in the chat and you can just pop over there. If you are strapped for cash, if things are hard for you right now, completely understand. I know that it's a really difficult time for a lot of people, but it would be amazing if you would help us spread the word. If you're a streamer, it would be wonderful if you made your own team page and did a little charity stream for us. So there's so many ways that you can get involved in supporting these organizations right now, above and beyond giving. So thank you so much for tuning in. Eve, thanks so much for chatting with me today.
Pleasure, always, Anita.
Yeah. And thanks to the mods, and thanks for everyone for coming in and listening to this chat with us. We will see you tomorrow. When will we see you tomorrow? Tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific time, we're going to talk to Kate Edwards about the really fun work and important work that the Global Game Jam is doing. So tune in tomorrow, 11 a.m. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.